Hello there, dear friends, and welcome once again to the Relaxed Fantasy Review. On this channel, we spend our time looking at fantasy of all sorts, from books to movies to video games, and applying the characters within into the tabletop game Dungeons and Dragons 5th Edition. And today, we're going to be looking at a core mechanic of D&D itself. In fact, I would argue this is the core mechanic. This is something that a lot of people lose sight of as they talk about the game Dungeons and Dragons, and I believe that a lot of DMs may lose a little bit of balance on, especially when they're junior DMs. And that is the three pillars of D&D. It says right in the player's handbook, as well as in the Dungeon Master's Guide, that D&D, while it is an open game that people can interpret as they see fit, the suggested way to play D&D is that there are three pillars of play, and these three pillars are the foundation upon which all good games of D&D are formed. The three pillars of play, in my opinion, should be balanced throughout all D&D games. Depending on the group you play with, some of these pillars may be bigger than others, and that's something that a good DM should read into. The three pillars are as such: exploration, social interaction, and combat. I'll talk about them all briefly. The concept of exploration is that D&D is a colorful world, full of all sorts of kingdoms, nations, even realms of existence, characters, dungeons, castles, forests, mountains. Who knows? There is an infinite number of possibilities of ways you can mix and match the different biomes and different nations of D&D. And exploration is part of this. There's a lot of skills that are involved with navigating the world, a lot of tools that you have at your disposal. A lot of subclasses lend themselves to this ability to navigate the world. Puzzle solving is part of exploration. Doing survival out in the wild, exploring a city, investigation is part of exploration. The idea that your characters have to move throughout the world is a key component. The second one, social interaction. A lot of people chalk this up to persuasion checks. And I'm like, yes, persuasion checks are a big part of it. This is why the bards and the rogues and the charismatic characters often are the kings of social interaction, because a lot of the time, if you want to get information from someone, you roll a good persuasion check. But it is so much deeper than that. It is about navigating faction intrigue, about politics. It is about knowing when to go to the king and his court and when to go to the rogues of the underworld. It is about knowing how to navigate the rivalry between different factions of warriors or wizards. It is understanding that some dragons you have to slay and some dragons you have to appeal to. The idea behind social interaction goes into the core concept of reading the room, reading the situation, and knowing how to deal with it in a way that isn't killing everything. Speaking of killing everything, the third pillar of play, and possibly the most popular, depending on who you ask, is combat. This is when you hear those wonderful words, roll for initiative, to determine what order in combat you go. And combat is the easiest thing to talk about because it basically just comes down to everyone charge in and everyone fight. Obviously, some people prefer ranged combat, some prefer to use their magic, some prefer to swing a great axe, some prefer to be shield-wielding frontliner. There are many different forms of combat, and combat itself does not have to just be who can drain each other's hit points the fastest. There are a lot of mechanics to combat, crowd control, and tactics, and lots of different ways that you can do the battlefield differently. Whether you are the players and making tactics amongst your allies, or whether you're the DM and making something other than a horde of goblins. Some hags with their magic, a dragon who flies in the sky, maybe a purple worm that burrows under the ground. I mean, how will the players deal with that? There's a lot of different ways that combat can be more interesting than just a meat grinder. And this is where the key comes in. Interesting. The point is that all three of these pillars of play are interesting to different people. Some people want to play a survival-based game. Exploration should be the main pillar, while the other two back it up. Some people want to play an intrigue campaign. Investigation and politics and social interaction should be the pillar of their game, with the other two as the support. And some people just want to murder hobo their way through everything. And then combat should be their main focus, while the other two play support. And this is the key to being a good DM and having a good game of D&D, is understanding that these three pillars are varied and complex, and knowing your players and understanding what they want out of a game is important to balancing your games of D&D correctly. Know your players, know your pillars, and play D&D the way that you want to as a group. This has been the Relaxed Fantasy Review. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe down below, and keep your eyes peeled for more videos coming down the line soon. Have a good one, my friends.